Hey, Duberteers, welcome back to the show. I'm really excited for our next guest today because she's somebody that has made just an impact in animal welfare going on, Kim, almost 40 years ago. And we're going to have her talk about her story and how she got there. But really excited to talk about what she's done, what she's continued to do to advocate, made so many changes that have affected thousands and tens of thousands of lives of animals. So, Kim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I've enjoyed being here, Chris.
I'm really excited to have you here and just talk about your journey and what you've learned and to share. So maybe start us off. Tell us about you, introduce yourself, and about your organization.
Well, one correction. I've been doing this for probably about 50 years.
Okay.
So I started off as a special ed teacher, and my passion has always been my entire life is on human animals. So way back then, there was just no avenue to do any kind of advocacy for animals.
Yeah.
So I volunteered at some shelters. You're doing humane education, doing public shows at the Berkeley Animal Control Agency from where I resided. I just wrote to organizations of how I can help. You know, you go literally through the telephone book under animals in the yellow pages and white pages. I know it's very hard for the youngsters to comprehend. What? You couldn't just Google that? You know?
Yeah, right. You didn't Google it. You didn't go to Claude and AI it.
No. Then there was no animal rights movement to speak of at all. But I just kind of plundered along and then ended up at Oakland SPCA, a paid job doing humane education. And then finally found Peter Singer's book, Animal Liberation. That was in 1975.
Wow.
And I would go to the bookstores constantly on Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley. And the animal section was just about pets, you know,
Okay.
and dog training and maybe a little bit of wildlife identification, but certainly no issues addressing animal suffering and the abuse and the misuse. You know, when I finally read Peter Singer's book, that was an eye-opener, and vegetarian from that point forward. And then, I was working for the Humane Society. That was in the Bay Area, just right next to the airport in San Francisco. Did that, was in the ED for a while, and then I co-founded Animal Place. That was like 38 years ago.
Wow. I'm sure it seems like yesterday and a long time ago at the same time.
Yeah, it feels more like yesterday. Yeah.
Take us back. I mean, hop in the time machine. Take us back to that 37 years ago when you and a co-founder, right, said,
Yes.
let's buy land and let's do this. I mean, it sounds kind of crazy when I say that out loud.
Yeah, the co-founder is Dr. Ned Buchmacher, and he was a veterinary ophthalmologist at UC Davis. And at that time, I was executive director of Peninsula Humane Society. And I've told this story so many times, and it's just etched in my brain. I was working and heard this blood-curdling scream coming from the office, and ran downstairs, and there's one of our animal control officers got his arms around this little pink squiggly pig. And she was a stray and probably fell off a transport truck, or maybe more likely was being raised as a backyard slaughter. And we had to keep her for the stray period, keeping our fingers crossed nobody would come looking for her. And during that time, I got to know her. You know, I would visit her. I would visit her every day, usually on my lunch break, and, you know, share my sandwich with her. And it became so crystal clear to me how there was nothing, her name was Zelda, that we knew her, nothing different between Zelda and my dogs who came to work with me. And at that time, interestingly, our adoption staff was working like mad to try to find her home. And there was a couple of people that came forward, but they wanted to, you know, raise her to barbecue her. And that was, no, absolutely not. We're a humane society. Oh. However, during that exact same time, we had a fundraising event. That was the design of it out of my control, unfortunately. And they served meat, and ham being ones. And everybody ate the ham. All the staff that cared deeply for animals worked tirelessly to help dogs and cats, and who worked tirelessly to try to find a home for Zelda. They were eating her, basically.
Yeah.
And that was one of those aha moments, when that powerful disconnect, that it's not sufficient that someone just meets an animal and sees the cognitive ability, sees their emotional. It wasn't enough. You need to kind of guide them through that process of why it's wrong to harm them, why it's wrong to contribute to that, to their death.
That's amazing. That one story obviously was a cathartic moment for you in your brain, and you said, I need to do something about this.
No, in the past, I was focusing on dogs and cats, a
Sure.
lot of wildlife protection, getting rid of steel dot traps, outlawing the decompression chamber, working for students' rights so they wouldn't have to dissect, served on UC Berkeley's Animal Care and Use Committee as a public member. I had worked on all those issues, a lot of legislation, and yet I just hadn't been awakened to farmed animals.
So then what did you do next?
Well, we adopted Zelda,
Of course.
and we both sold our respective homes. So cashed out our homes and bought raw land, 60 acres in Sonoma Solano County, which is kind of between Sacramento and San Francisco and Berkeley.
Okay.
And no power. There was an old windmill that was kind of pumping the water from this little shallow well, but no power there was just nothing there. And so we put up fences and barns first. There was an old dilapidated trailer that also had no power. I mean, it was a dilapidated trailer. Can't believe we lived in that thing for a year. And then, we built the house last. That was, the first was getting a safe environment for the animals. And that's how it began.
And Zelda was the first animal that you saved.
Our first official rescue. The other co-founder had some animals at home, a few geese, a couple of goats. And but Zelda was, the first official rescue of animal place.
So then how did things progress from there? So you had Zelda, obviously your co-founder brought some other animals. Sounds like you had a wide open space. So that, like you said, you had to put up fences and a barn and just kind of get the basics in place. But then where did it go from there?
Well, what it went from there, for the first 10 years, we supported it ourselves out of pocket while we were both working full time. Immediately, which I am proud of with Animal Place, immediately education was as important as saving lives. Knowing that you really need to go to the root of the problem
Sure.
while you're trying to, save those that are in the system already. It was work. It was just nonstop work. It was, luckily, I then was working for the Fund for Animals, Cleveland Amory's group, which many of the youngsters probably don't know about, but that was our animal activist group. And they allowed me to work from home, which was kind of unheard of back then.
For sure.
So, I was at my computer at home and then constantly first thing in the morning, jumping out of bed and doing all the feeding and cleaning and putting them in bed at night and checking them during the day. A lot of the animals came into the house, like these potbelly pigs that we rescued. So we built 2 little beds inside the log home because they just preferred sleeping in there, especially during the winter. And that was lovely. There was almost no division between human and non-human residency there.
Yeah. Did you guys have a vision for what you wanted it to be when you started?
I have coached so many folks who want to start sanctuaries, and I always say you should. You need a business plan.
Yeah.
We did none of that. We did none of that. Absolutely none of it. It was just this spontaneous response to a need. And fortunately, we both brought great skills, veterinary practice, as well as then I had the administrative and the education practice. We just kind of made it happen. We started with tours, did a lot of farm tours for folks. And they were quite popular because it was still a novelty back then. People didn't understand, you're raising them? I said, well, no, we're not raising them. We're saving them. You're not going to use them? They couldn't quite grasp that for farm animals, which is really sad, but it tells you where the awareness level was back then. But everyone very respectful. Interestingly, of all the media, we had a lot of media coverage, especially initially the first 20 years. There was they could have had a field day, making fun of, but it was all very respectful, very respectful.
Yeah, it sounds like people were genuinely intrigued, interested, even if they didn't understand what your purpose, what your mission was.
Exactly. Well stated, Chris. Yeah, that's exactly.
Interesting. So you started with education, tours, like you said, trying to, get them to understand, I'll call it the plight, the life that these animals would have had you not brought them to your sanctuary.
Exactly. And I was doing vegan cooking classes at the community colleges around me. And so those were a great way to reach people with food. And I think that's kind of a welcoming opportunity to educate people about how delicious vegan food is and how it's pretty easy to even veganize your favorite menus.
Right.
And then we did a vegan cook-off every year in the Sacramento region. And then also we took it to San Francisco. And then we started my very favorite program that is still running to this day is the Food for Thought program. And that is that we work with shelters, SPCAs, and animal control agencies, and, environmental groups too, wildlife rehabbers, of adopting a board-approved policy, vegetarian or vegan. Now, fortunately, most of them are vegan, for their events, be it a lunch for the staff or a board lunch or an event that they're having for their donors or the public. And that's a slow go of getting policy, but we've got, I don't know how many we have now, well over 600 shelters. That's out of a list of like 36,000 or so. I mean, it's a very slow process to reach out and encourage them to consider adopting a policy.
Yeah, it's such a small change, but I know when I've gone to conferences and stuff, it does cause you to pause and think, if they can do this, why can't I do this, right? This food tastes amazing. It's nutritious. It's not like hard to swallow or anything like that. So a simple change like that and encouraging, now you're up to, you said 600 organizations.
Now, well, you told me you just returned back from Best Friends Conference, and way back when they were a hard sell.
Sure.
And now I believe they do have a vegan policy.
They do.
Yes. And so there's the fear of, which I find so fascinating. It's a fear of alienating donors. And you want to say, well, who are your constituents? Are they the people writing a check? Or are there the animals that are suffering that you need to save their lives and you need to educate people of how they too can participate? So that concern about donors is, to me, it's like putting a dog or cat breeder on the board of a humane society. You don't do that. So looking for some consistency of values. What do you stand for? What does your organization stand for? Is it that you're only concerned about in wildlife rehab saving that raccoon because that raccoon just is suffering and you want to help that raccoon or that baby bird, but it doesn't extend to what you eat? That's a challenge that we just put forth over and over and over again, and hopefully in a gentle way. Although sometimes I can get a little irate.
A little bucky.
I can, yeah. But to encourage them to really look inward and examine their own values as well as the values of their organization.
It sounds like this is something that was a small initiative program or whatever when you started doing it, but now it seems like it's become core to what you're hoping to achieve.
It's always been core to what we hope to achieve. Always has been. Yeah. It's and there's progress made. There's an awareness of veganism.
Sure.
There's less of a pushback. But that is the absolute core of Animal Place. Yeah.
How have the programs at Animal Place changed over the years since you started, obviously with tours and the vegan cooking, but it seems like you've expanded into other things.
We do a lot of themed tours. Like we're doing one next month on mindfulness, as they're going to be practicing meditation and in the different pastures with the animals, which I love. We've done that before. We've done the on-site, and then after COVID, virtual farm to animal conference, where we had people from all walks of life within the primarily U.S. to come and speak. We've done Brave the Cage. We did that for a number of years, where we had bands going where they're large size, like human-sized battery cages.
Okay.
And they have signs, and then we have video playing, and we encourage college students, because we go to college campuses, to step inside the cage, preferably even with your shoes off, so you can, and get a sense, and bring your friends into that cage with you. Get a sense for the conditions under which chickens raised for their eggs are kept. You can tell them how crammed they are. You can even show them pictures.
Sure.
But it is, I think, an experiential awareness that you have. And we have a museum of animal farming also at the sanctuary, which I'm so proud of that we got built. So it's trying to find our programs have been trying to find ways to reach people where they are and help them on that journey of, my old mantra is putting your compassion into action.
I really like what you're talking about because you're not shaming, you're not yelling at people, you're not telling them they're bad. The image that came to mind as you were describing that was, I remember back when I was in high school, they called it the enforcer and the police, or no, it was just get you to wear your seatbelt and then this little slide thing and you would sit in it and only went 20 miles an hour. The convincer, that's what it was. I had to think about the name. And nobody shamed you. They just said, here's what it's like. If you're only going 20 miles an hour and you don't have your seatbelt on, you can imagine how hard it would be. And if you're going 50, and so many people walked away from that going,
oh, that one's very powerful. Yeah.
And that's what it made me think is your approach is very positive. You're not judging, you're not shaming. You're saying, listen, I can tell you all day long what it's like, or you can experience it yourself.
Exactly. And I think most people, there's a lot of folks that'll see one video or they'll come to a sanctuary and they'll go vegan, boom. Most don't. For most people, it is a process. And being aware that we're asking for a change of behavior. I always say it doesn't do squat for the animals to feel bad for them. They're not benefiting from you feeling bad, and you're not benefiting. You have to do something with that compassion, with that empathy, with that caring you have inside your heart, and do something with it. Put in, and so that is kind of the emphasis. It reminds me, I was walking through the sanctuary, it was 2 weeks ago, and I think it was a tour after the meet out, so maybe it was about a month ago. And I was taking somebody else for a tour, and I came upon a little path, a mom with her kid, little child. And she's bending down on the ground. And, I stopped, said, what do you, and there was a little, not even a caterpillar. It was a little green worm that comes from all the oak trees that will eventually be a caterpillar. And I mean, ever so little. And she was bending down and trying to coax the little worm off the road. Because, he would have been stomped on. And I stopped and talked to her about it. And I was so taken by that sensitivity. And I told her, I said, you know what? You are exactly what we're about. You feel compassion for that little worm and you're helping. You're putting your compassion into action. And it's those actions, as you see something that could cause harm to an animal, intervene, do something about it. And that little girl, bless her heart, I swear to God, she's probably no more than 3 years old, 3 or 4 years old.
Wow.
She had that feeling in her heart back then.
Kim, if you had a time machine and you could go back and give your younger self advice, what would you tell her?
Great question, and I don't have a clue. I don't know. Probably look at that, mistakes I made and said, you shouldn't do that. Yeah, I don't know. That one I'd have to reflect on.
Yeah. It's hard to think because it sounds like you've had so many pivots along the way and you learn things and opportunities. And obviously you learn things that work and things that don't. And you honed your message, but you still fell back to that common purpose, right? You never lost sight of what your purpose and your passion for the vision of this organization is.
And never. And I get the question a lot of how do you cope with all that, and all of us who do any kind of animal, how do you cope with that constant? My coping mechanism, my antidote is just work harder to help them. If I'm not helping them, that is when then you feel powerless and I can see myself, I'm just kind of wilt away feeling bad for them, which does no good for me and it does no good for them. So my antidote is just everybody can do something.
Yeah, it's something I say quite frequently. I'm a guy in technology, and you go, how in the heck does technology help animals and shelters and sanctuaries? But at the end of the day, they're still organizations that have systems and people and all these other things to run and to run efficiently.
Absolutely.
And so there's that, like you said, I've said to people over the years, I don't care if you're an accountant, an attorney, a social worker, a food preparer, it doesn't matter. There's a role that you can play. Find what you like and pivot to connect it to animals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're so right.
There's always something that you can do. How has your leadership style allowed you to lead your organization through some of this? Because every day is not easy, right? Some of these changes, you have setbacks and things don't go your way or whatever it is. I mean, how do you inspire the staff to keep going?
I think the folks who tend to work for a sanctuary or probably for an animal shelter too, for that matter, most of them come with a concerned heart, a caring, an empathy for animals. So there's that. They also know when they're coming to work for Animal Place that we are not an animal welfare organization. We are an animal rights organization. We're an abolitionist. That doesn't mean that we don't work for incremental change. There's no piece of legislation I've ever worked on that would be the absolute getting rid of everything. But I think they're very clear when they come to work for Animal Place what our mission is. Our mission has not changed one iota from day one, not one iota. It's always been an animal rights organization promoting veganism, period. Those are the non-negotiables. I don't know how I think in some ways I've made terrible mistakes in managing. And in other ways, I think I did a damn good job. I think it's been a mixed bag, as I would probably say for most administrators, and probably even more so for most of us founders. You're working with no money. You're volunteering yourself. So I hired several people before I put myself on the payroll. There's that edge to everything you do. And I don't think that's necessarily beneficial when managing people, so keeping that really calm, grounded exterior is difficult. It's just hard.
Yeah.
But everybody's there for the same, when there's strife, everybody's there to remind you for the exact same reason. And as I've always said to folks, when some who are really sensitive because, Joe Blow, he just, he didn't say hello to me this morning. And there's more of a super sensitivity. And I said, yeah, but, Joe Blow might have had a really bad morning caring for that sick hen. And it's kind of like, as I was trying to make the analogy to folks, is if you broke your arm and you're kind of favoring it and then somebody bunches up against you, you're going to go, ow, and kind of lash out, watch it. And there are those emotional scars of the trauma that everybody carries with them. And some days it's worse than others. So it's that being aware of each other's trauma that they're dealing. And they're also, you got to experience the joys and celebrate the joys. I think that is absolutely crucial. That's
the small wins over the years, right? When we get caught up in the day to day and you forget you're changing lives, you're saving lives, you're making progress. You may not always see it.
You can see in the eyes of the animals who have a permanent loving home with you. So when you're down, it's take a break and go lay down with one of the pigs and give her belly rubs,
Yeah.
That's really healing, I find.
Nice. Well, as we start to draw to the end of the show, I always like to end with a bit of a lightning round, just simple questions where we can learn a little bit more about you as a person. So you ready?
Go for it.
All right. I think I know the answer to the first one, but are you more of an early bird or a late night owl?
Early bird.
I kind of figured you sounded like you were up at the crack of dawn and obviously doing chores, but also just being with the animals. What is the most unexecutive thing you had to do this week?
Well, understanding that I retired 2 years ago. And so I am now president of the board, but I'm not doing the day-to-day out there.
Okay.
So that would be,
well,
I can tell you what it is now. For me, I live next door to the sanctuary and building a little ADU. So I had to get the garage ready for the contractor right before. So I was sweeping out this very, very, very messy, dirty garage. And so that's a pretty non-executive. And I think you'll find with all founders, non-executive tasks.
That's what we do. Yeah, right.
All the friggin' time.
Yeah,
Probably a big mistake. Pull yourself away from those make better use of your time. Yeah, that would be.
That's actually good. That's a really good lesson because sometimes you go, well, I can do this, but it's not that you can't. Should you, right? Is your time better spent on more strategic?
And that's probably, and I think that's where I failed a lot. the other part of me is if you're asking somebody to do this, is kind of clean the toilet, mop the floor. I just think you should be able to be willing to do it yourself. And I think the staff should see that you're willing to do it yourself. So more of an equal participation, but that's not the best formula when you need somebody to really steer the ship. So
Yeah. No, I hear you. What do you like to do to decompress after a hard day?
I love immensely just spending time with my dogs. That is to me probably the most gratifying time. I live out in the country. I'm blessed with that. I've got a pond right I can see from my window. It's rich with wildlife. And to sit outside, which I was just doing yesterday, and just listening to the birds. There's such a wide variety of birds. And I get my binocs out and I look at who's hanging out of the pond now. There's great blue heron. There's turtles that love resting on the wall. That is so rejuvenating. Just being outside and quiet and taking in, being surrounded by this incredible, beautiful nature.
Yeah, enjoying life. I like that. My final question for you, Kim, is what do you want your legacy to be?
I think my legacy is just do the least harm, and maybe not even do the least harm because that's a bit passive. It's my old mantra: put your compassion into action. Do something. Do something to help. As we know, there's just so much incredible suffering with humans and non-human animals in this world, and the destruction of the environment. There's no lack of ways to help.
There's lots of ways. And for those younger generation, go ask ChatGPT, how can I help? I guarantee you'll get thousands of answers.
That's a great advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to Google. I think I'm going to do that when I hang out. See what does
You should.
chat.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things. So, well, Kim, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for sharing your story. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, Chris, I appreciate being invited. And I think your podcasts for kind of trying to motivate animal activists out there is a great service.